The first time I said real men don't bake, it was a joke I thought he could handle. It was a Saturday morning, sun coming through the kitchen like honey, my husband slipping a round of dough from a banneton onto a preheated steel like he was performing a small miracle. The loaf cracked open in the oven and sang that quiet, glassy song crust makes when it sets. He stood there with his ridiculous oven mitts. Lemons printed on them, a gift from our daughter. And grinned at the window like he'd conjured civilization by 10 a.m. Real men don't bake, I said, rolling my eyes so my sister would laugh. She did. He did, too, because at the beginning we were the kind of couple who could cut each other lightly and call it flirting. He handed me a slice with butter soft enough to melt at the edges and said, real men let gluten do the heavy lifting. We all laughed and ate too much bread. The joke should have died there. Instead, I sharpened it until it could cut bone. I'm 42 now, and it's astonishing how many of my biggest regrets started as jokes that got bigger every time I was afraid of what was underneath. I married a gentleman. He bakes. He drives what I called a tiny car, a two-door hatchback he loves because it parks anywhere and sips gas. He listens more than he talks. He gets excited about small things. An open crumb, the first strawberries of May, the way cardamom smells if you crack the pods yourself. He is, by every definition that actually matters, a good man. I was the one who needed real to look louder. The car was our first serious fight. When we were dating, I thought it was quirky. Cute even. That Sam drove a hatchback with a dent that made the bumper look like it had a dimple. I rode shotgun with my knees brushing the glove compartment and pretended we were in a European movie, windows down, scarf flying, everything breezy and charming. After we got married and bought a house, the car turned into a symbol I didn't want. I wanted people to see us unloading groceries and think provider, not undergrad with a parking pass. We could afford a bigger car by then. He didn't see the point. It's paid off, he said. It fits everywhere. I can haul flour and a kid and 2 guitars if I Tetris it right. Why would I pay to be worse at errands? Because I wanted to be worse at errands with a leather interior and a badge that shut my mother up. That isn't what I said. I said, because it's small, Sam. It's embarrassing. He looked at me then like I was speaking a language he didn't know, but he tried to conjugate it anyway. Embarrassing, how? It gets us to the same places. Faster sometimes. Real men don't drive toy cars, I said, and watched him fold that sentence and put it away the way you put away a shirt you didn't want to buy but bought anyway because someone you love said it looked good. I made fun of his baking in front of people because one-on-one he could look me in the eye and ask, why does this bother you, and I didn't know how to answer without saying something I couldn't take back. In a group, I could hide my discomfort inside laughs and everyone else's noise. He'd bring a pie to a family cookout and I'd say, loud enough for my uncle to hear, look at Martha Stewart over here. The men would chuckle, and Sam would set the pie down with a polite smile that made me feel like I'd put a thumbprint in the middle of it. Later, in the car, he'd ask, do you know how it feels to have the thing you're proud of turned into a punchline? I'd shrug and say, you're too sensitive, because if I called it sensitivity I could avoid what it really was, his joy shining a light on my own lack of one. When our daughter, Nina, was 8, he signed up to bake for the school fundraiser. He spent 2 nights perfecting lemon bars so the curd was glossy and the crust held when you picked them up. The night before the sale, when he asked me if I could pick up extra parchment squares on my way home from work, I snapped, maybe if you spent half as much time learning to grout the bathroom as you do baking for strangers, our house wouldn't look like a rental. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. I told myself I was exhausted. I told myself I was right. We argued for 40 minutes about tile and priorities and whether preheating a baking steel for an hour was a waste of electricity. He slept in Nina's room that night, on top of her comforter covered in constellations, and in the morning he left me coffee anyway, the way he always did. We tried couples counseling once. The therapist had soft hands and a way of saying I'm hearing, that made everything sound reasonable. I said I felt like I was mothering a man who wanted to be praised for chores. He said he felt like he was married to someone who measured love in the noise other people made when we entered a room. The therapist asked where we learned our definitions of real and successful, and I made a joke about magazines. Sam said, quietly, my dad didn't cook. He worked late and came home and fell asleep in his chair. I thought it would be nice to feed my family. I thought it would be useful. I stared at the carpet pattern and felt a headache bloom above my right eye. I didn't go back. I told Sam therapy felt like paying to have someone side with him. He didn't say the therapist didn't side with anyone, though it would have been true. He said, okay. No therapy. Contempt is an acid that doesn't look dangerous until you put something valuable in it. I made fun of his apron. I sent a group text to my sisters of his sourdough starter with the caption Sam's second child, like the first one. The actual child wasn't sleeping down the hall. I minimized his car every time we pulled up to somewhere I wanted to be noticed. We look like we borrowed a teenager's ride. Do we need to take 2 trips? Your clown car has the trunk space of a purse. When he tried to trade shifts with me so he could attend a Saturday bread class, I said, can you imagine if I told my boss I couldn't work because my hobby needed me to make it rise? He canceled the class. I put the date on our shared calendar anyway so I'd remember the day I won something not worth winning. At my cousin's engagement party, the guys gathered around the grill like it was a campfire and the women hovered around the island swapping recipes and slapping hands away from the deviled eggs. Sam brought out 3 trays, focaccia with tomatoes pressed in like jewels, a berry galette, and cheddar jalapeno biscuits so flaky you could see layers without cutting them. Everyone cheered. My uncle, beer permanently attached to hand, said, you're making us look bad, chef, and I, desperate to be in on the joke, said, he's just compensating for his car, and people laughed the way people laugh when they smell blood. Sam didn't laugh. He set the trays down and went outside. I found him later by the side gate, hands in his pockets, looking at the neighbor's oak. Why do you do that? He asked without turning around. Do what? Make me small so you can feel big. I said something cruel about him being dramatic. He nodded like I had confirmed the equation he was solving and went back inside. He didn't touch me that night in bed. I lay awake and told myself he was punishing me, that I should be mad. I didn't ask why I needed him to be wrong so badly. The car came up again in the dumbest possible way, parking for Nina's recital. The lot was a mess, SUVs jockeyed for spots like hippos in a river. Sam slid the hatchback into a sliver of space by a pillar, neat and patient, and I said, loud enough for the family in the neighboring minivan to hear, well, at least your little car is good for something. He let the car idle, hands on the wheel, and looked at me carefully, like a doctor about to deliver a diagnosis. I don't want to be married to someone who is embarrassed by the way I exist, he said. Then he turned off the engine and helped Nina out of the back seat and tied her shoe double so it wouldn't slip during Ode to Joy. That night he brought a folder to the kitchen table. Sam is a folder person. Neat, labeled, everything in its place even if it's just printouts of YouTube recipes and measurements for the pantry shelves he kept meaning to build. This folder was different. It had 3 tabs, budget, schedule, and house. He'd calculated what he could afford to rent if he moved out for a while. He'd made a schedule where Nina would have 2 weeknights and alternating weekends with him. He'd printed a list of therapists with sliding scale fees. The last page was a note in his tidy block handwriting, I love you. I don't like who we are together. I won't teach Nina that love looks like contempt. I laughed. It's the worst thing I've ever done. You're going to leave me because you think you're Paul Hollywood and drive a shoebox? Be serious. He didn't yell. He pushed the folder across the table so it bumped my knuckles and said, read it. Then he went to bed. He moved out 2 weeks later. We told Nina the truth in an age-appropriate shape. Grown-ups sometimes need space to stop being mean, he said, and I waited for her to ask if I had been mean. She didn't. She asked who would pack her lunch on Tuesdays. He said he would. He started making heart-shaped cucumbers and tiny notes that said things like good luck on the spelling test. Cinnamon is hard. I sent another text to my sisters, he's turning lunch into an art project now, followed by an eye roll emoji, as if gentle, daily love were a show. We split money like business partners instead of enemies. He took his hatchback, his guitars, his proofing baskets, and the Dutch oven he seasoned better than most restaurant pans. I kept the house and the big SUV I bullied him into leasing the year before. The SUV payment felt righteous when I signed it in a showroom full of chrome and coffee machines. It felt like a cinder block around my ankle when I made the first payment without his half of the mortgage. The first month alone, I tried to prove a point. I hired a contractor to grout the bathroom myself. Well, I paid a man with a van to do it. He tracked dust, nicked the tub, and left the edges uneven. When I texted Sam a picture. Because nasty gloating needs an audience or it dies in your throat. I wrote, looks like I didn't need a bread schedule to get this done. He responded with one word, nice. That was worse than a paragraph. Nina started spending Wednesdays and alternate weekends at his apartment above a hardware store. He chose it because it was walkable to her school and had a galley kitchen. He said, wants to make pie. He sent me a photo of her on a stool, flour on her cheeks, smiling with all her teeth. I zoomed in on the background and saw his lemon oven mitts. Hers, technically. He took the good mitts. I cried for an hour over fabric shaped like citrus. People ask how I ended up begging for therapy. It wasn't one scene where I heard a line and changed. It was a slow, humiliating montage of me discovering how loud my life had been with him in it and how quiet it got without. The house sounded wrong. The kitchen smelled like nothing. I tried to make pancakes and burned them because I was reading a thread about masculinity on my phone and forgot the second side goes faster. I drove the big car and felt small in it. Work didn't save me. I'm in marketing. Launch calendars and tone of voice guidelines and the bizarre modern skill of saying nothing in 200 words that sound like a lot. A new coworker used the phrase baked in a meeting and I flinched like the word itself could hit me. HR sent around signups for a stress management workshop. I clicked the link because it was something to click, and the facilitator talked about Gottman's research like a recipe. For horsemen, contempt is the deadliest. I googled it in the parking lot and felt nauseous reading about eye-rolling and sarcasm as the rot you don't see until a beam gives way. I saw myself everywhere. It is an ugly thing to recognize your worst traits with a clinical, peer-reviewed name. I called one of the therapists from Sam's folder. I still had the folder. I'd put it in the drawer with takeout menus and appliance manuals and pretended it was a thing for later. Later, it turned out, was a Wednesday at 3 p.m. With a woman named Lila who had a voice like a paper towel, practical, no fuss. I told her my husband left because I made fun of his baking and his car. I expected her to raise an eyebrow at how stupid it sounded. Instead she asked, what did you get out of making fun? No one had asked me that without accusing me. Power, I said. Deflection. If I made him small, I didn't have to look at the fact that I'm nothing special. She asked where I learned small was safe. I told her about my mother's don't get a man too soft, he'll slip through your fingers, and my aunt's men are for lifting, women are for light. I told her about my dad bragging about my brother's first truck like it proved something, then mocking Sam's hatchback like it proved something else. I told her about the way women in my family trade roast recipes like currency and how I thought Sam doing the cooking took something from me I hadn't earned in the first place. I told her about being jealous of the way our daughter looked at him. Like he invented Saturdays. Lila didn't let me swim in shame, she handed me shorelines. You can want to be admired and still not use humiliation to get it, she said. Admiration built on contempt collapses. She gave me homework, one apology per week to a person I had cut with a joke, structured like a recipe. Name what I did without excuses, say how it likely felt to them, say what I'll do differently next time. She told me to write a letter to Sam I wouldn't send. I wrote 4. The first 3 were sneaky. Defenses dressed as confessions. The 4th was just I'm sorry I made your joy a threat. I'm sorry I could not bear that you were content with less noise. She told me to find one thing that felt like competence and do it daily. I started running at dusk when the neighborhood is pink and forgiving. It made me good at something boring. I needed boring. I apologized to Sam on a Sunday when he dropped Nina off. I did it on the porch because kids absorb sound even through walls and I didn't want my sorry to be turned into pressure on her. I said the sentence Lila made me practice, I'm sorry I mocked you in front of people you love, it was cruel, I did it to feel big when I felt small, I won't do it again. He looked at me for a long time and then said, thank you, like a person accepting a package that arrived late and travel dented but still intact. He did not invite himself in. He did not hug me. He did not offer a gold star. He asked Nina if she wanted to bring home the last 2 cinnamon rolls he'd made just okay because he was testing a new flour. She said yes. I ate one over the sink and cried into my own elbow so she wouldn't see. The car thing took longer to pry out of me. Every time I saw his hatchback parallel into an impossible space, I wanted to run over and say, "See? That's exactly why you," and then stop because the rest of the sentence was poison. I practiced saying, "That looks handy," and then shutting my mouth until the desire to make a joke passed. Jokes had become a tic. I had to treat them like a habit you break by pausing. He started seeing someone 6 months after he moved out. I know because Nina accidentally called her Maya and then went rigid like she'd broken a law. We had the talk about grown-ups dating. I swallowed the urge to say something that would make my daughter spy on her father for me. When I met Maya at a school play, Sam introduced her with that care he gives small things. She shook my hand and said, "I've heard you make killer lasagna." It was generous of her to assume I cook. I said, "I'm trying," and meant it. That night I took the lemon oven mitts out of the drawer and put them on my hands and stood in the kitchen with nothing in the oven and said, out loud, "I don't get to win him back by learning to make pie." It sounds silly. It was necessary. The old me would have tried to trade effort for forgiveness like a kid trying to swap dessert for vegetables. The new me knew like a hairline crack, nothing dramatic. Knows that consequences aren't a negotiation tactic. He owes me nothing. He owes our daughter kindness and consistency, and he delivers both like clockwork. I don't have a redemption arc to sell you. I have a calendar full of therapy sessions and a notes app folder full of apologies and a budget spreadsheet that makes me sweat on the first of the month. I still drive the big car. I haven't traded it because buying another car to prove I've changed is exactly the kind of error I make when I want a shortcut. The bathroom grout is still uneven. Every time I see it, I remember the way I weaponized provider and real man against a person who was actively providing time, care, food, steadiness. And I sit with the discomfort until it shrinks to a size I can carry without dropping it on someone else. The win is his, and I say that without bitterness. He did not scorch me on social media. He did not teach our daughter to roll her eyes at my name. He did not stand in my driveway and list my sins for the neighbors. He left a house that had become an echo chamber for my contempt and built a quieter one where a girl can learn to laminate croissant dough and a man can drive a small car to a big joy without someone shrinking it for him. He refused to be measured by my mother's voice in my mouth. He refused to be humiliated for choosing care over spectacle. He set a boundary, and when I pushed, he didn't move it, he moved out. If you're looking for realism, here it is. No judge forced him. You don't need a courtroom to end a marriage. Just 2 papers, some signatures, and months of choosing not to fix a thing that's broken in the same way it broke. We haven't filed yet. We live like divorce without the stamps, separate addresses, shared calendar, money Venmo'd with notes like cleats and field trip. People assume paperwork is the heavy part. It isn't. The heavy part is making dinner alone on a Wednesday and deciding not to text him a photo of something you're proud of because pride is not a rope you get to pull on anymore. Nina asked me last week if real men bake. I told her real people bake, drive whatever car fits their life, and say sorry when they're wrong. I told her the strongest person in our family is the one who makes sure everyone eats and feels safe. She said, "So? Dad," and I said, "Yes." I didn't add, "I'm trying to be one of those people, too." I show her that instead by packing her lunch on my nights and not making jokes that put a thumbprint in the middle of other people's pies. I am alone, and I am begging for therapy in the way you beg for clean water when you realize what you've been drinking. I don't know if Sam will ever sit at my table again for reasons that aren't our daughter's. I think he's happier. I think Maya laughs at his puns about yeast. I think they fit 3 bags of flour, a kid's cello, and a box fan into that hatchback and feel smug about the Tetris of it. I hope so. I hope he never again has to measure himself against a standard I repeated because I was afraid of being ordinary. If you need a hook to hang this on, I lost a good man because I needed real to look like noise and metal and the admiration of people who don't make me coffee. The man I married left because he got tired of being the butt of jokes he didn't audition for. He won by refusing to accept the part. He kept his dignity. He kept our daughter's trust. He kept the oven mitts with lemons, which is fair. I keep my hands bare on hot pans now, and that's on me. Sometimes on Saturdays, I walk past the farmer's market and buy a loaf from his stall. He started selling, quietly, out of the hardware store parking lot. Now he's there twice a month with a chalkboard sign and a line. I join the line, and when it's my turn, I point to something that looks like it took patience. He hands me the bag and looks me in the eye like a person, not a memory, and says, "Have a good weekend, Claire." I say, "You too, Sam." I take the bread home and set it on the counter and do not make a joke. I slice it carefully, butter it, and sit with the truth while it melts. I was wrong about what makes a person real. The bread is warm, and I am learning, slowly, to be, too.